Hi sewing friends, my name is Michelle Umloff and I'm a national educator in the sewing industry. My job requires me to travel quite a bit as I represent companies such as Salke of America, Clover, Baby Lock, as well as Pam Demore, the decorating diva. So I'm a little homebound right now and I decided to do some community work for the hospital here in Frederick County, Maryland. The Frederick County Development Council posted a pattern for us to use to make the face masks for the doctors and nurses at the hospital so that they can wear these protective masks over top of their N95 masks. I went to the development center today and donated some masks, and they were super appreciative of our efforts. So I wanted to personally let you know that they really appreciate it, and they're going to be put to good use. They told me that these protective masks that we're making will help prolong the lifespan of the N95 masks that they use. And they also said that they're getting the masks donated, these kind of masks donated steadily, and that they're still going to need some more. So don't stop making them. So when I read the instructions that they provided us, which was a great foundation, and I kind of thought it was a little complicated, and I followed the thread online, and I noticed that some other people were saying that it was much harder than they thought. Well, I want to help you make these masks, and I made this process a little bit easier, and I think you'll be able to really pump them out. The other night I made 20 of them, kind of working in assembly style, and that's what I would recommend for you to do. I do recommend that you make a tester first, live and learn by that one, and then you won't have any problem putting them together. So we're actually going to make one together, and you're going to see how easy it really is to do. So I have to switch cameras, so stand by for a moment. So here you're seeing the finished mask, which you can see that it has a few pleats in it, which may have caused you some problems in making these. So what we're going to do is I'm going to start from the beginning, just as if you are a new sewer. And I have a piece of fabric here. This one, I just want to show you that when the instructions say to fold this with the right sides together, what they're indicating is that they want you to fold it so that the print is on the inside. If you're not a sewer, you might not know what that means. So you're going to fold it like so, and you're going to press it. And I'm using this really cool iron. It's made by Oliso, and what happens is when I let go of it, the iron raises. Can you see that? And if I touch the handle, it lowers all by itself. So it's kind of fun. You can turn that feature off if you want. Okay, so we have our fabric and its right sides together. The first thing that you're going to do is sew a seam right across the top. Now the instructions say to use a 1/4 inch seam allowance, and when I switch the camera over to the sewing machine, I'll show you exactly what that means. But I've gone ahead and sewn one. So after you have it sewn, what you're going to do is turn it so that it's right sides out. So think about a t-shirt. When your shirt is inside out, it's you can't see the print. So now that it's right side out, the seams are on the inside, and sometimes we call that the pretty side out or the fashion side out. This tool is called a hot hammer, and it's made by Clover. And what it's designed to do is to turn hems over. It has some really great marking lines, which I'm going to show you later. But if you have this tool, what you can do is insert it inside the tube, and it'll help you press your seam. So oftentimes that can be a little challenging, but if you don't have the tool, you don't need it to do this step. So you just use your iron and you press the seam. You're going to press the mask nice and flat. Now what I did is I started off by taking the seam and putting it down towards me. I don't know if you really need to do that or not. I haven't looked at it that closely. Just a word about your fabric is you want to make sure that you pre-wash your fabric when you buy it, and then after you have washed and dried it, then you're going to cut it out to size. So just so you know that the health department requested that. On some threads I've been reading that it's helpful to wash it in unscented fabric or laundry detergent, so that's a good idea. And remember to keep your pets away. Now my cat and I work together in my sewing room, but when I'm making something special like this, I go down to the kitchen and I do half my work down there and I sew up in my sewing room. So as you can see, I've placed the hot roller on either side of my soon-to-be mask. And if you don't have the hot hammer, that's okay. Use a ruler. I don't care if it's like a school ruler. That'll be fine. And you're going to need some pins to do this. Now, I'm using some marbled head pins. You could use glass head pins. And if you don't have glass head pins or marble pins, what you can use are just those regular metal straight pins. And the reason you want to use the metal straight pins is we're going to place the iron on top of the pins, so this is going to be really helpful. Alright, so we're going to mark the fabric for our pleats, okay? Now, like I said, the instructions that we were provided were a little bit confusing at this part, so this is where I've made it not only easier, but faster for you. So what you're going to do is you're going to place a pin in at the 1.5 mark. And you're going to do this on both sides. So you're going to hear me repeating these measurements quite often. So we got 1.5. The next one is going to go at 2.5. The next one will be at 3 inches. And you don't have to put the pin all the way in, just a nice little bite into the fabric. The next increment is 4 inches. I should be ashamed of myself. My pin is bent. The next increment is 4.5 inches. That's right, 4.5 inches. And the last one on this side is going to be at 5.5 inches. So I'm using this really neat pin caddy. It's magnetic and it holds the pins, so it's kind of nice if you happen to drop them or whatever, they just fly right into that. And that's also another Clover product. So I'm going to mark the fabric in the same increments on this side. So you could even like put tape down to help you do this pressing and mark the increments on your piece of tape. Sometimes in the sewing industry we use the painter's tape, the blue painter's tape. The next increment is 2.5 inches. That's not very, it's sticky, but it won't leave a residue on your fabric or your tabletop or whatever it is. The next increment will be at 3, then 4, now we're going to go to 4.5, and the last one is at 5.5. My cat also likes to steal my pins, so I really like this pin caddy because it has a top. You can snap the top on. Top can also serve as a nice little base for the pin caddy. So I'm going to set that aside. Alright, the next step is we're going to work with these pins in sets. So you know that we did this set, the first two at 1.5 and 2.5 inches. Then we had the 3 and 4 inches. I always get this wrong. Every time I've made this video, I always miss one. So it's a good way to check. So we have 3 and 4 is our next pair, and then the last pair is 4.5 and 5.5. So I'm going to take the 1.5 inch pins and I'm going to bend the fabric, fold the fabric up to the 2.5 inch mark. Okay. Now I'll take one of the pins out And I'll take the other pin and I'll stick it inside the fabric, and there's part of my pleat. On the other side, I'm going to do the exact same thing. Remove my pin, stick it in the fabric, and there, I've marked my first pleat. Man, that is so much easier. Okay, now with the ones that were at the 3 and 4 inches, we're going to do the same thing. We're going to fold the fabric over and take it up to the next pin. So 3 inch goes to 4 inch. I like to make things easy for people because I think if this is easy for you, you're going to enjoy it, and you're going to be able to make a lot more of these masks in little time. Now you might notice that this is something that one of your helpers can help you do. So not everybody has to know how to sew to do this, and it just takes some basic sewing skills to do this. And I say that lightly because all you have to do is sew a straight line, and you can do that. And the 4.5 inch pin is going to go up to the 5.5 inch pin, like so. So the other night I did this process, and I had about 20 of them that were ready to be sewn, and it makes it go by a lot faster. Alright, I'm going to get my iron and I'm going to press. I like to use steam to do this. It sets those creases in. One thing else I thought about telling you was I'm going to be using elastic, but I hear that there's a shortage on elastic. It's kind of hard to find because so many people are making these masks, and at the end I'm going to show you how to make some ties. So look, it stays in place just like that. So isn't that awesome? So that's it. That's like, for this step, that is all there is to do it. We're ready to go over to the machine and sew. All right, I'm at my sewing machine. It's a Baby Lock Solaris, and that is a very nice sewing machine, but you don't need a machine quite as sophisticated as this one. So what you're going to do is thread your machine with construction thread. And what I mean by that is if you go into the store or you look at the spool, you'll notice that it says all-purpose thread. That's the type of thread that you want. Sometimes people will pick up the wrong thread. They might pick up upholstery thread thinking that it's thicker, it's stronger. No, you want to get all-purpose thread, and you want to use a 80-12 size needle. Now you can wind that thread onto a bobbin. Now I have white thread in my bobbin. I have a bunch of pre-wound, so I just usually use those. So don't worry about the color. We're not making an award-winning quilt or a garment that we're going to place into the county fair or anything like that. There's no police here, as we like to say sometimes. So a 1/4 inch seam allowance. You probably have a presser foot that looks very similar to this one. What I'm going to do is have my needle in the center position. I know that may or may not make sense to you, but my needle is going to be right at that little notch right there. And I'm going to have my fabric in lining up with this notch on the inside of my presser foot. So this is where my needle would go up and down. My fabric's going to go up right against that side there. It's not imperative that these seams be totally accurate, but they need to be, big enough so that they're going to fit on over these masks. So I'll place my fabric underneath here. Now, people who are inexperienced at sewing might feel comfortable to sew over these pleats just to secure them before attaching the elastic. I myself, I don't personally pin, but if you do, go ahead and do some pinning. Now I have elastic, and I'm going to cut a piece right now to 7 inches long. That is my preference. I tried on one of these masks and it kind of bothered my ears a little bit, so I figured There's got to be somebody that has a head at least my size, maybe even bigger. And so that's why I'm doing mine at 7 inches instead of what they recommended in the instructions, 6.5 inches. So I have my elastic here, and I'm going to place it right there. It's about maybe 1/8 of an inch down from the edge, and if you want, you can even pin it. So for you, I'll put a pin in here. I've recorded this video a couple times, and I've actually kind of almost forgot about the elastic. So we'll have to pin it twice. You want to make sure that the elastic is not curved. So you don't want to make sure you don't have it twisted. So you want it to be straight. And there is no right or wrong side to these masks at this point. Okay, so I have my pins in there. You want to keep them out just a little bit so they're easier to get to, and you don't want to sew over the pins, okay? That's important. You could break a needle. You could even throw your machine out of time by sewing over those pins. So I'm going to raise my presser foot, and I'm going to lower it. And the important thing is you're going to want to back stitch when you first start to sew. So I'll explain that. I'm going to push the gas pedal, and it's going to go forward a few stitches. Now at this point, before I really start to sew, I'm going to remove that pin, because I know as a beginner sometimes you push the gas pedal and your machine just takes off. So I've removed that pin, and I'm going to push the gas pedal. My machine is set up that it will automatically back stitch, and I like that feature because I won't forget about it. Now as I go over the elastic here, you could back up and go over that elastic again. My machine is computerized. I have it set up that if I push the reverse button, it's going to cut the threads, and then I'll have to start sewing all over again. So I'm going to keep on sewing until I get down close to the next pin. So it's coming close. I'm going to remove the pin, and I'm going to sew over top that last piece of elastic. Very easy. Now I'm going to tell the machine, like, whoops, look, I did that myself. It's very easy to do. That I'm finished sewing by pushing the button, and she is going to cut the threads and back stitch for me. So there, that was really, really easy and pretty fast, wasn't it? So we're going to do the same thing on the other side, and this time I'll be a little bit of a rebel and show you how I attach the elastic without the pins. I'd much rather sew slow and not have to pin. It's just me. It's not a race. Okay, I'm coming towards the end here. I'm going to grab my piece of elastic. I'm going to raise my presser foot up so I can get it under there and hold it in place. I think the elastic attaches really easily this way, but I can certainly appreciate if you feel uncomfortable. And I'm going to tell the machine that I'm finished. She's going to back stitch and cut my threads for me. And ladies and gentlemen, you have just attached elastic to this. So there's another step. Now what you're going to do is we're going to do what's called like a overcasting edge along this raw edge. I've been making a lot of these masks using my serger. So an overcast edge looks something like this. And on a serger, it has a blade that cuts a raw edge and it finishes it just like this. But we can kind of mimic that on your machine. You're going to look for a utility stitch on your machine. And if you don't know what utility stitches are, get out your manual. If you don't have the manual to your machine, that's okay. You're going to want to look for it online. Most all manuals are online nowadays. And for me, it's number 1-16. I know it to be the case because it tells me the overcasting stitch. Now, if we were going to do this for a true result, I would change my presser foot to what it tells me to. But I'm going to leave it on this all-purpose foot because I'm going to say most of you have just that foot, or you might not have the other one, or even know what a foot is, the letter G. Alright, so we're back in position. I have that stitch all set up. Now see how the fabric is fraying on the end here? It's just going to continue to come apart. Look at that. It's just going to continue to fray. This overcasting stitch is going to help prevent that. So I'm going to place the fabric back under my needle, and I'm going to have my row of stitching so that my needle will go right over that first row of stitching. Now you might not be that precise, and that's quite alright. Closeness counts, or effort counts as well. So when I push the gas pedal, it's going to take a couple stitches and it's going to swing over to the right. That is the overcasting. I think ideally it would be great if you could get that even closer to the edge, but we're going to make it work. Once you're finished, you want to make sure that you trim away all these threads. So they might tickle somebody's face, and that would be really uncomfortable. So just cut all those threads. As a word of caution, I secure all my threads in a jar because I don't want my cat to get a hold of them. So I'm going to repeat this process on the other side. Tell the machine that I'm finished. Alright, I'm going to trim these threads again. Now, the next step is we're going to turn this over, because now this is going to be the right side of our fabric. This is going to be the outside. So we'll turn this over and keep the elastic out like this. Now, I have done some where I turned the elastic under. You just have to be careful you don't sew on it. Either way it will work. But we're going to turn this under, and you're just going to pinch it, okay? And you could use a pin to hold that in place for sure. Clover even makes these really cool wonder clips. Let me show them to you because they're really nice. I think they are like the best thing since sliced bread. So they have clips even. This is a medium-sized clip that'll hold that fabric like that. They have a small one too. That's really nice. So these are really nice. So I'm going to put this under here. Now this time we just have to do a top stitch. And the purpose of our top stitch is not necessarily decorative, but it has a purpose. So what it's going to do is when we fold this fabric over to the other side, it's going to hold that seam down underneath, okay? And you'll be able to see that just a little bit better. So I have to set my machine back up for a straight stitch. Now this time, because this area is a lot thicker than it originally was, I'm going to increase my stitch length. Now, you might find if you don't increase your stitch length that your machine is going to stall. And what I mean by that is it's just going to sew in place and not move forwards or backwards. So having a longer stitch length is going to allow us or allow the machine to take a bigger step, if you will, and it'll help it go over some of these bumps. You'll notice that particularly when you start out sewing, maybe the first couple stitches. So this time I am going to come in just a little bit closer. Oftentimes you could even move your needle And you can look at your owner's manual to see how to do that. But I think for just explaining this to you, I'm going to move the foot itself, or the fabric itself, over a little bit. And let me try to get in there nice and close so you can see what I mean. I'm going to lower the needle so you can see about how far away from the edge I am. I know this can be kind of hard. You could do a zigzag stitch. That would be totally fine. When I go to the other side, I'll do a zigzag stitch so that you can see it. And that would be fun. It'll be pretty. So it's going to take the 3 stitches. You know what? And I was talking about the stitch length and I didn't increase it. There we go. So I'm going to remove this pin while I'm thinking about it and hit the gas pedal. Sometimes these pleats are going to want to ride up a little bit, and I think if you use a good quality cotton fabric, you're not going to notice that as much. So if you have really thin fabric, they might want to fold up. So again, we're just catching the seam allowance that's turned under. So I'm down at the end. I'm saying machine, I am finished. Just saying okay, let me reinforce this. And there you go. One side is finished. So again, I just want to remind you to cut these little stray threads. They're annoying. And then we'll go to the other side and we'll do the same thing, but this time I'm going to set my machine up for a zigzag stitch. So just in case. And there's nothing wrong with putting even 2 rows of straight stitching down. You could even do a real pretty decorative stitch if you wanted. So let me use that Wonder Clip. Hold that fabric under for me. The original instructions called for you to kind of bind these edges, and oh my goodness, I was like, there is no way that somebody that wants to do some good work for their community and really can't sew can do that. So alright, so I have my machine set up. It's going to do a zigzag stitch this time, and you'll notice that looks quite cute too. Let me make sure I get my fabric under there in the right spot. So I actually have the fabric right along the edge of the presser foot right there. So let's see what that looks like. And I don't think that's over far enough. So I could do one of 2 things. I could either cut the thread and adjust it, or I can just make my zigzag stitch a lot wider, and that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to make it wider because I can, and so can you. So just look at your owner's manual for help like that. Alright, I'll tell her I'm finished. It's really important to do that step to, we call it back tack, but stitch forwards and backwards at the end. And there you go. That looks very nice. Alright, so the choice is yours. So we have just made 1 complete mask in that little bit of time. Now I did a lot of talking, but you'll be able to do those so much faster. So there you have it. We finished 1 complete mask in just a few easy steps. So good job. Alright, so we might have to make some ties, and I wanted to show you a way to do that. Now again, there's a couple ways that you can do this technique, but I think that this might be easier for y'all. So you're going to fold a strip, and I've made this 1.5 inches wide. I think it needs to be at least 12 inches long. And you'll probably have some scraps left over. If things look a little mixed match, that's quite alright. Let me show you this other cool tool. This is called the iron finger. And what this does is it prevents you from burning yourself when you're doing something like this. So that's a really neat tool. That's also by Clover. Raise that up. Alright, so we've put a crease down the center of this strip, and now what we're going to do is fold the center, or fold the raw edge to the center. So again, this is going to help prevent this tie from fraying. And you'll just do that all the way across. Now I usually do set my iron on high. And you might have to make adjustments. Some of you may have been getting a little nervous because I was holding it in place for a long time, but it's okay. You'll know. It depends on your fabric too. A good quality cotton fabric will tolerate the heat better than cheap fabric will. Alright, we're almost there. Now this takes a little bit of time to do, so if you have the elastic, I'd recommend using the elastic first. Now I hear that people who have sensitivities to latex, that elastic contains latex, so there'll be a need for both types of masks. I'm going to show you how to do it this way, and then I have another tool that I can show you that will help make this process a little easier. And faster, of course. Alright, so we have that. The raw edges are pressed towards the center. The next step is to fold that in half, so those the raw edges are what we call encased. And you're going to press it again. So just to remind you, this strip was 1.5 inches wide by 12 inches long. And our mask, the dimensions for the mask was 8 inches by 14 inches. Okay, you're going to need 4 of these, and when you go to sew them onto your mask, what you would do is sew them this exact same way. Well, I would recommend sewing down the center of this to keep this strip together, and even if you could sew a little bit closer to the folded edges, that's better, but down the center at least, or something very close to that, and then you would attach it to when you're sewing your mask, when you know that first seam that you put on, when you're securing the pleats, that's when you would put your ties on, and you can put them in put the tie in the exact same space, about 1/4 inch down. Alright, so let me show you an easier way to make these ties. Let me see here. I need a pair of scissors. I'm going to show you a little trick. Alright, some of you may have a little gizmo that looks like this. This is called a bias tape maker. This one's also made by Clover, and this one measures 3/4 of an inch, so it's 3/4 of an inch wide. You can use the 1.5 inch strip. You're going to fold it in half just on the end, and you're going to take a pair of scissors, and you're going to cut from the raw edge up to the fold at a diagonal. And when you do that, you have a little point, okay? You're going to place the bias maker so that you can see the color, and you're going to stick that point inside of the bias maker and push it through.
Now, if you have a hard time feeding it through, you could use a seam ripper. Every sewer should have a seam ripper because that's going to happen. I have a stiletto here that's by Pam Demore, and you're going to push it through so that you can grab this and start pulling it through. Look at that. See how that saves us a step? I'm going to press as I pull the tape maker back, and it just makes this so much faster and easier. I love tools, I love gadgets, I have them all. I'm having a new sewing studio built, and I'm really excited about it. And someone recently asked me if I was going to do lessons, private lessons, and entertain me. I just might do that, especially since a lot of my work has been canceled and I don't have any trips planned for quite some time, and who knows what's going to happen. So we need to fold this in half again, just like that. Now this makes quite a thick tie, in my opinion. You could do a 1 inch, but 1 inch wide strip by 12 inches. But I know I had that 3/4 of an inch handy and I knew it worked, so I just did it that way. So again, I would top stitch down the center of that or close to the folded edges. So when I say folded edges, I mean these ones that flap open, just to keep them nice and secure. You could make shoelaces like this. That would be really cute. Easter is coming. So everybody, let me switch over to the other camera.
So thank you for watching my video. I hope that this video helps you make these masks. I hope my techniques are a little bit faster and easier for you. I think you're going to be able to really achieve sewing more of these with less frustration in a shorter period of time. And remember, it takes a village, so don't feel like that you have to go on a crusade and make hundreds of these, because all of us together make a difference, and all of us will be chipping in and donating them here and there. So I think I dropped off about 20 of them today, and then I'll make a few more maybe every day, and then when I have enough, or when I have a need that I have to go back out down to Frederick, I will take another batch to them, because they're really appreciative, and we know that they're going to be put to good use. So do me a favor. Go to my Facebook, it's Sewing Machine Artistry, and give me a like there. A little earlier I talked about someone requested if I would do lessons, and I will highly consider that. You can contact me through my Facebook page, Sewing Machine Artistry. My profile for Facebook is set to public, but some people can't send me a friend request, so they usually message me and then I have to accept it. I don't know how all that works, but you can definitely find me. I do have a website. It's sewingmachineartistry.com, and together we're going to make a difference, and we are going to get through this. So stay well and safe, everybody.